Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's the closest you've ever come to death? Near-death experience, or just escaping a dangerous situation? Please remember to like, share, comment, hype, listen and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe.
I was on a U.S. air flight in 1992, leaving LaGuardia for Cleveland and catching a red-eye back to LAX. We had barely left the ground, hit something, and the plane broke apart into the East River. I don't even know how I got out of my seatbelt, but I was upside down in the water, still inside a piece of the plane. I was 27 then, and now I'm 60 and still have nightmares. I did finally return to flying, but I never go near the water, and I live in a quiet, shoreside Lake Superior town. I had a heart attack last year. A blood clot formed in my LAD-1 artery window maker, and it blocked 100% of the flow. I'm in my early 40s and fairly fit. I had almost no symptoms prior, other than being unable to catch my breath. I went to the ER, and as I walked in, my chest suddenly felt like it was being crushed. I knew what was happening at that moment. I immediately went into cardiac arrest the second they hooked me up to the EKG. They did CPR for several minutes and defibrillated me twice. That was a close one. I'm a retired electrician. Was shocked once by a wire that had been chewed by rodents, but I didn't realize it when I touched it. Because the wire's insulation was chewed off, I was shocked pretty hard. It was 240 volts, and my hand locked up. I wasn't able to let go. As I stood there screaming for my partner to come help, I realized I was on a stepladder that I could jump off of and allow my body weight to pull my hand off the wire. I jumped, and it worked. I ain't dead yet. I'm allergic to penicillin. I was a little kid who had been sick for a couple of weeks, and it was the time when penicillin was given for virtually everything. A couple of hours after the shot, I got out of bed and told my mother that I needed to go to the bathroom, but couldn't. Then I didn't feel sick anymore. I got my little rocking chair and started singing. I felt like I was falling backwards into blackness through a tunnel, and then I was gone. I came to on the table in the ER, surrounded by worried adults. I don't remember anything else, but my mother told me that I had been talking to my dead grandmother and a puppy that I had lost the year before. I had no idea why they seemed upset. Potassium dropped dangerously low when I was about 38. Was brand new to kidney failure, still figuring out meds, and the ones I was on contributed to this. Not sure what happened because it's all very fuzzy. I remember going to bed and thinking weirdly that I was going to sleep so well. Woke up a day and a half later in the ICU. Apparently I got very cold and unresponsive, and my boyfriend called 911. My blood pressure was so low, it registered 40/0 on the BP cuff the paramedics used. Body shutting down, I was apparently about 30 minutes from having the best and last sleep of my life. Very badly. Pulse was 220 for more than 3 hours, even after medication. I couldn't see because my eyeballs were vibrating. It hurt everywhere, especially my eyes, ears, mouth, and genitals. I couldn't stop shaking and jerking involuntarily. They gave me a shot that literally stopped my heart. I flatlined. I watched the flatline on the monitor. It felt so good to die. No more pain, no more shaking or movement. Everything was still and quiet, other than the head doctor counting seconds until they officially start electrical shocks. They apparently scared my heart into compliance, though, because after 28 seconds my heart restarted on its own and behaved without incident for several more years before the next incident, and now the medication works mostly. I have never felt quite as good as how I felt in that 28 seconds. I joke I died, and I've been chasing that high ever since. They did ask me if it hurt when my heart stopped, but no, it made everything stop hurting instead. This procedure is usually done under anesthesia, but because I wasn't responding to other meds, they had no choice. I told them it was better than the time I got to 0.25 milligrams Dilaudid for appendicitis pain as a teenager. They were surprised I was conscious and lucid the whole time. and only complained of feeling slightly lightheaded. Driving home from a friend's house as a young 20-something, super corny, but Kanye's Jesus Walk song was on, and I was into it and decided to extra chill and drive just a little slower. Guy who just passed me legally got hit head-on by a pickup truck that crossed over the yellow line around a curve. I remember it all in slow motion, and car pieces flying everywhere. I was in shock, went to check on the occupants. The guy was in really bad shape, gasping for air. The cops were there super quick and asked me to leave. I wanted to give a witness statement, but they just kept asking me to leave, so I did. That was a surreal drive home. I never found out what happened to them. That shook me and made me go from a typical young driver, take that as you will, to my chill driving self now. Definitely could have been me if I was in front of him. Oh, and the 2 intestinal blockages I've had, those suck. I've never knowingly had any near-death experiences, but I have done some pretty dumb things when I was younger. Drinking, getting into cars with strangers before Uber was a thing, riding in speeding cars with no headlights through back roads, etc. It got me thinking that there's probably so many times where I was lucky to not have something terrible happen. And I'm wondering if anyone else thinks of that, or really did have a near-death experience like nearly drowning or anything. Oh, actually a few weeks ago, the parking lot at my condo had 2 feet of powdery snow fresh fallen over the hard-packed, lumpy ice snow from the prior week's freeze-thaw-a-thon. I was trying to unplug my truck from the front. I did so, then turned and was going to go to the driver's side door. Caught an angled chunk of ice under the snow and full-on slipped both legs off the ground in a V formation and landed on the upper part of my back. The powdery snow cushioned my fall, but the thick wooden stand where our cars plug into was right next to where my head was. If I were a little to the side, I would have bashed in the base of my skull with my full body weight. I'm 6'2" and 330. 100% I died in a parallel universe. After I gave birth, my blood pressure spiked and it resulted in me getting readmitted to the hospital. Turns out I had HELP syndrome, which can be fatal. My blood pressure was 210/150. Ooh. I would close my eyes and could see every vein in my eyelid. I just remembered the scary feeling of panic, like I knew I was about to die. I'm pretty sure it did permanent damage to my circulatory system. When I was a teen working at summer camp, 6 people held me down in the pool while beating me. How that wound up happening is a whole story on its own. My head was dunked so rapidly that I couldn't take breaths and I lost consciousness. I have a very vivid memory of floating in a void with an overwhelming sensation of peace. But while that was happening, apparently my body moved on its own and I attacked the ones drowning me. I came to hyperventilating, while the 2 strongest staffers there held me back from hitting anyone. Sometimes I'm still amazed I didn't die that day. Friday night, 65-mile-per-hour freeway rush hour, raining, and I'm on my motorcycle in rain gear when I went down. I was hydroplaning on my back with a busted ankle, toes where my heel were supposed to be. I started turning sideways and I knew if I did I'd tumble and that would probably be it. So I started dragging my right arm to try and steer. It worked mostly, and when I slid to a stop I threw myself over the concrete barrier right as a little red car skidded past me. Honestly thought it was over several times.
I know we probably all have had some type of situation like this. I know I have. And it's fun to read, although also harrowing, just to see what a millimeter or an inch or a foot or a second or a minute can make, and the difference between writing your story or somebody else writing about it. So be careful out there and just live. Like Tracy Jordan once said, live every week like it's Shark Week.
I had an overdose when shooting IVing cocaine due to mistakenly mixing up 2 different bags of it. One was a whole lot stronger, and I thought it was the cut and weak one due to being tired and texting while mixing it. As soon as I pushed the plunger of the needle down, I could feel it was way too much, and there isn't a lot you can do by that point. I started shaking on my bed, in the needles seizing and feeling my entire body being wrung out like a wet rag. My head was filled with sharp noise and strong light or flashes. I heard people going into my house, hallucination, and was trying to shout and scream at them, but I couldn't even move. I was drooling and shaking, my eyes rolling and contorted. It's weird, because I didn't pass out fully, so I could see my face and my phone, and it looked painful, sure felt like it too. Kept a benzodiazepine nearby for worst case scenarios like this, so I popped it quickly and chewed it. I'm pretty sure it helped save me because my heart was beating out of my chest hard as a steam train. Not a peaceful way to go out, that much I do know now. If I passed out, I don't know if I would have been able to take the pill and lower my heart rate. When I was 15, I fell asleep at the wheel on my way home from work, going every bit of 65 miles per hour. Went through a country road intersection and into the woods, snapped several trees and finally came to a stop 25 yards into the woods. Last tree stopped my 98 Jeep Cherokee so hard the rear hatch glass flew into the cabin. I somehow got out and started walking toward home in the pitch black of Highway 41 in South Carolina. I walked so long in darkness, I began to start seeing the same tree over and over again. I thought I was dead and this was the road to hell. I came quite close to dying and didn't know until after it had been fixed. Not sure if that counts. Had abdominal surgery. Got discharged after 4 days. For about 3 weeks I was uncomfortable and feeling quite sore. Difficulty getting up and walking, going to the bathroom, etc. Pain just wouldn't go away. Fast forward a week, it's just too much. Even with pain meds. Go to the ER, get an MRI, and the next thing I know I'm getting drains put in. Twilight sedation. Woke up and was told I was hours from sepsis of the body cavity. I was in hospital for 5 more days on IV antibiotics I've never heard of before. I'm fine now, mind you, just glad that was over with. Which one should I start with? At 14, hemodialysis had fluid buildup. Emergency room doctor decided I needed a lung biopsy. During said biopsy, my heart stops. What I was told later was that the surgeon went around the table, sliced the other side of my ribs open, got a rib spreader, stuck his hand and started pumping my heart to beat on its own. Later that night, my heart stopped again, and they did the traditional paddles. Last year, I've had at least 8 bouts of sepsis, and 2 of those were near a kiss of death. And both. They had to put a central line in my neck to pump a special medication. Basically, adrenaline to keep my heart from stopping. Blood pressure would at its lowest 40/20. Alaska 2015. Worked at a fishing lodge on an island near Juneau. Had to do a run to town to get gas and fresh water. It was a beautiful calm day, sunny and nice, and thought about leaving all my rain gear at the lodge while I did the run. Drive boat into town, get fuel and water, and start heading back. There's a certain point you get past and it turns to open channel on the way back to the island. I hit the channel, and about midway through I got hit with a 30-mile-per-hour gust. Only the gust wasn't a gust. It never went away. It turned into sustained 30 to 40 miles per hour with gusts even higher. My flat, calm, beautiful day turned into 10 to 12-foot seas. Basically, giant washing machine I couldn't escape. I was in a 16-foot skiff with a 45-horsepower engine full load of gasoline and water jerrys. Going back was shitty as going forward. Just decided to chance it and moved onward to the island. Took me an hour and a half. I was serpentining the waves, riding up then down the best I could. Water was pouring in over the sides and I was not even close to the life jackets. If I had let go of the motor, I would have lost all control of the boat and got flipped. When I finally made it back to the island, the neighbors that had all lived on the island at the time were on the shore with binoculars trying to find me. The back of my boat where I was sitting had water all the way up to mid-shin. Fishing captains had all pulled the lines out of the water to come look for me and couldn't find me, because of how high the seas and waves were, plus they themselves were taking a beating. After all that, and a talk with God, I ate lunch, took a nap, and went back to work with the guests and fishing captains got back. I've had 2 close calls. I was caught in a riptide in Majorca, and I was desperately swimming along parallel to shore trying to get out of it. No one on shore noticed. I finally came out of it just as I hit limit and was able to crawl onto shore. The other time I was skiing on a glacier in Val d'Air, and a storm came in so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. It was our first day, so we didn't know the mountain at all. We skied down, slowly. I'm still not sure if that was the right move or if we should have hunkered down somewhere, but we weren't prepared. We made it down safe but scared. When I got up there the next day in the sunshine, I saw just how many places there were that could have easily skied off into oblivion. I got out of the riptide because I'm a decent swimmer, and I knew what to do. Getting down from the glacier alive was 100% pure dumb luck. My wife and I met in high school band. Freshman year of college, our high school band went to Indianapolis to compete in nationals, and we decided to go watch, which meant driving from Denver to Indianapolis. Saturday night was the competition, and it went late. We stayed up even later, then got up at about 5 a.m. to start the drive home. Being young and indestructible, we figured if we got super early start, we could drive straight through and still make it back for class Monday morning. We made about an hour outside of Indy. She was asleep. I was driving until I wasn't. Woke up when the car hit the back of a semi. I panicked, turned the wheel too hard, and sent the car spinning through the median. Thankfully, it was a rural stretch of I-70 with a wide grass median between the 2 directions. Even today, I only remember flashes, but the big thing that I vividly recall was when the car stopped moving. I was laying on the driver's side and I looked up and saw she was no longer there. I didn't have any idea how I managed to pull myself up and out of her window, but I saw her running toward me. Since she's been sleeping, she hadn't had a seatbelt on, the last time she ever did that, and had been thrown clear. Thankfully, when the car was already on the grass, a very, very kind volunteer at the hospital called my parents, finding out that we were basically okay. I had a bad cut on my head that needed stitches, but otherwise we weren't badly hurt. My parents made flight reservations for us to get home that evening. The volunteer took us to his house so we could shower and clean up. He and his wife fed us and then drove us the hour back to Indy for our flight. He then worked with my dad to take care of the car. So many slight things could have happened to end things very differently. If she'd been thrown from the car on the pavement instead of the grass. If the car had rolled a bit further and ended up in oncoming traffic instead of the median. If Mazda had made the car a bit worse. Everyone who saw pictures the volunteer took of the car said it was a miracle we both walked away. My only real regret in the whole thing, I can only call that stranger the volunteer because I don't know anything about him beyond that. I was traumatized enough by the experience that it was a long time before I wanted to talk about it, and by the time I did, my parents said they had lost his contact information. When I was a teenager, I passed out from doing whippets and driving down a 45-mile-per-hour road, went over the median and across 4 lanes of oncoming traffic. I went into this rich lady's backyard and a natural creek that ran through it. The nose of my car hit the rocks on the bank and flipped my car head over heels, if you will, into the creek. I woke up upside down and was able to crawl out of my smashed window with only minor injuries. My car was absolutely destroyed, like a pancake that got ran over. Made me think of the cars they would show in drunk driving commercials they would play back in the day. Since I was a teenager and therefore invincible, jokes, I hardly ever wore my seatbelt, but I just happened to be that day. I've worn it every day since. I've had delusional hallucinating meth dealers pull loaded guns on me and pointed a foot from my face, convinced I was the FBI there to get them, despite being a mangled, hollowed-out crackhead myself, lol. I overdosed in college, accidentally very badly on a cocktail of different pills. I was convulsing and seizing and hallucinating in my bed. debating trying to get to the ER or just die. I opted for the latter, but made it through. The most interesting part to me is I clearly saw a very bright white Jesus hallucination in my otherwise pitch black dorm room. Interesting, because I was a devout atheist at the time, still not religious in the slightest bit, but not so anti like I was at the time. I can still see the image of Jesus in my head quite clearly, despite the rest of the event being quite blurred. Definitely felt like the bright white light commonly associated with death or near-death experiences. Multiple times almost freezing to death in negative temps while living on the streets, shutdown of bodily functions, legitimate complete numbness in extremities, etc. A few other stories. Haven't been a drug addict or alcoholic for a couple of years now. Life has gotten quite pleasantly boring. Went snow tubing 10 days ago. We finished up our last slide down and my husband and oldest kid were coming down the hill. I decided to grab a video of them. As I was filming, a double occupancy tube overshot the safety area because it was icy. I couldn't move away fast enough. They hit my right leg and it threw me up, and then I landed hard on my front, but off to the right a bit. Obviously the breath was knocked out of me, but I honestly thought I'd bruised or maybe broken a lower rib. I independently walked back to our car and had my spouse help the kids stow the tubes. As I was standing there, my vision started to black out. I figured it was shock and I needed to sit down. Had my husband stop at a restaurant halfway home. The snow tubing place is about 2.5 hours from our house, so the kids could eat dinner. I was feeling nauseous and figured if I did have to go to the hospital for imaging, it would be better to have an empty stomach. Long story short, my ribs are fine. I have a 5-centimeter gash in my liver. Was almost transferred to a higher acuity hospital, but because my liver had already formed a hematoma and wasn't actively bleeding, I was admitted for observation for 4 days. A bullet through my stomach, .40 caliber pistol point blank, went straight through me into my leg. 6 hours of life-saving surgery, ICU in critical condition, several blood transfusions. They told my parents to plan my funeral because they didn't know if I would make it through the night. It destroyed my insides, but I made a full recovery with nothing but pain for life. The bullet stopped in the muscle in my leg. I have wicked scars. Explanatory laparotomy. They had to piece together my insides. Last thing I remember was telling the surgeon I didn't want to die. He said he won't let me die, and I woke up days later from an induced coma. Definitely don't recommend. You would think I'm not afraid of dying now, but it made me more afraid. I don't know if it was luck or God, but I'm still here today. Not me, but my girlfriend fell out of a rooftop tent we used to have as we were packing up a festival. 7 feet straight ahead, first into the ground. She slipped on the top of the ladder wearing socks. I saw her slowly lose consciousness over 10 minutes. She was speaking in gibberish before she lost it. Ambulance took her. She was okay in the end, but was in the ICU and coma for 36 hours and hospitalized for around a week. It was the scariest shit I've experienced, thinking she was going to die and have nothing but uncertainty from the doctors. For myself, downhill skiing in the middle of the night with like 40 skaters on the road and 100 or so bikes. Me and several friends were in the very, very front of the pack, going through a corner around 45 miles per hour. I closest to the yellow middle line, friend to my right wasn't gripping the road and slowly scrubbing toward me. Forced me into the oncoming lane because I couldn't slow down with everyone behind me, potentially causing a pileup. The moment I crossed into the other lane, a minivan came around the bend. Time fucking slowed down, all in unison. I threw my board into a drift and dove toward my lane. I remember seeing my foot just inches from the front of the van as I drove off the board, meanwhile readying myself to be hit by a plethora of fast-moving skaters and bikes, lol. Somehow I managed to roll across my lane onto the curb without a single hit, scratch, or injury. Also caused no other crashes. Stopped skating for a while after that, because in the moment, I truly thought I was dead. And nowadays I take it very low key with downhill stuff or mostly only skate park. August 28, 2013. Our TV was acting up, so I thought maybe a tree branch was blocking the satellite signal. I climbed up onto the roof. It was wet and slippery, so I thought, nope, I don't want to fall off of here. I stepped onto the ladder, got a few rungs down, and it kicked out. I only fell about 6 feet, but I landed on a steel pipe fence post. It punched a half-inch hole in my right side. A quick drive to the hospital and MRI, and suddenly I'm waking up from 3-hour surgery, missing several inches of small intestine and having had 4 holes in my large intestines patched up. The pipe grazed my liver an inch lower, and I would have bled to death in the driveway. Surfing. My board leash came off, and my board headed to shore without me. I started swimming and swimming and swimming. Turns out my poor swimming technique generated force only about equal to the outgoing waves, and I was moving exactly nowhere. As I got more tired, I was swimming less than nowhere. I was actually getting further from shore, or so it seemed. Can't tell when you're starting to panic. And damn was I frickin' tired, near exhaustion. Then I remember the surf instructor said, "This whole bay is basically a huge reef. Don't stand up until you're sure you're on the beach. You'll end up standing on the reef, and the reef will cut out of your feet." Huh. Maybe there was a reef below me. Cut feet be damned, at least I won't be dead. I let my legs drop, and barely, just barely, I could stand on my tippy toes on a reef or rock, and it wasn't sharp. Since the tide was apparently going out, as I stood there, I could hold more and more of my head out of the water and rest. Finally, my battery recharged. I swam hard for the shore and collapsed on the beach exhausted. I never surfed again. I'm sure this will get buried, but I feel like I have something neat to add. I've had a few over the years. Bad car accident on the freeway, falling between a boat and dock before I could swim and getting trapped underneath a tipped sailboat among the ropes once I could. Those early ones were all adrenaline fueled and felt the same. Time slowed way down, and the memory stored as a single image seared into my brain. I've had a few in the past 7 years that all required medical intervention and were not at all adrenaline-based. Hemorrhaging during labor, heat stroke, and sepsis. I owe a big thank you to anyone in the medical profession for saving my life when they did. You guys are beyond amazing, and the people who've worked on me, you still run through my head with gratitude on a regular basis. The latter ones are where it gets a little more interesting. The first one was heat stroke, and it came on like a bad mood. Everything felt scary and threatening and big. About the time I realized I might be in real danger was when things started to get weird, delusional. Everything took on a dark circus vibe. The birds I saw circling over someone's house, they meant something. The golden retriever I walked past turned its head 180 degrees to watch me. All these moments that your brain would normally write over took on this really important and dangerous context. The next time I experienced it was all following labor. I'd started hemorrhaging while I was pushing, and she got stuck in the birthing canal. I remember on the way to the OB trying to touch the doors and walls and recognizing for the first time the scratches from the wheelie beds on every frame. I remember the man in glasses at the door asking me my name and birth date like some kind of entry code. The third time I came close to death, I was working. I recognized the way I was seeing the world as close to death, and I drove myself straight to the ER. It was sepsis from a kidney infection. When I was 17, I worked part-time for Target doing flow team truck unloading on weekends. I had been there for a while and never hesitated to go in at 4 a.m. for the start time. That day I woke up, I told my sister I should call in and stay home, and she told me to stop being lazy and go to work. So I did. Shift went smoothly, stopped at the convenience store on the way home to grab a code red fountain drink and headed home. Dashboard Confessionals Hands Down was playing on my speakers when I saw a car run the stop sign. I don't remember the crash, but when I woke up I was sitting in my car in a church parking lot 4 lanes the opposite direction. I got out of my car, started screaming in pain, and my best friend's mom came screeching onto the scene. She had watched it happen. I was T-boned by the guy who ran the stop sign and miraculously didn't hit another vehicle. She got my phone and dialed home for me. My mom answered, so I asked to speak with my sister and told her not to freak out. She freaked out. Our mom freaked out. I could hear my mom before I ever saw the car arrive on scene, while the EMTs were stabilizing my legs and getting me in the ambulance. I shattered both ankles, both knees, my pelvis, my sternum, my collarbones, my nose, and had to get staples in my head from smashing the driver's window out with it. I'd been traveling just over the speed limit of 55, and it was determined the guy who hit me was going 70 and was drunk as a skunk at 10 a.m. The biggest thing I remember was how quiet and peaceful I felt during the actual wreck. I don't recall the impact, nor do I ever feel panic, until I stood up and felt the pain. Also, seeing code red all over the dash and windshield looked like a lot like blood, so that was chaotic. EMT and firefighters kept making comments about how it was a miracle I was alive, let alone awake and coherent. So yeah, that I suppose was the closest I've ever come to death. 9 years ago in Pia Beach, New Zealand, guy friends decided to go into the water. The weather was bad. One of them, well over 6 foot, took me, about 5'5", by the hand into the ocean. A wave as big as a house came over us. It took me up and I felt my body dragged out way too fast with the waves. Doesn't know how to swim, lost my glasses in the water. I heard a lot of the people see their life flashing before their eyes, but for me it was just a realization that it was just the last day of my life, and I couldn't believe how easy it is to die like that. There were no regrets or fear or anything like that. I was literally just accepting it, and mind you, it all happened in under a minute. But then I feel somebody lifting me out of the water by grabbing me from underneath my arm, like that monkey lifted up Simba in The Lion King, LOL. It was the friend who dragged me in. He said he was also dragged out, but was able to swim, and while he did that, found me and lifted me up. Turns out, it wasn't even that deep, but the waves were unbelievably rough, and I later found out that Pia Beach is actually famous for that. Some even say it's haunted. It was almost a decade ago, but I still remember that feeling of being dragged out. At first I was sort of embarrassed of what went in my head because it was so different from what most people said, but I guess that's just me. Now, it's just some funny story that I tell people, and I thought that it didn't really affect me that much, but I realized that I developed a phobia of underwater when I went to an aquarium with one of those aquatic tunnel thingies, and I couldn't see where the water started and ended. My body was shaking like crazy, and I cried so bad. Still can't even look directly at a picture of underwater scenes, even if it's a drawing. Death or kidnapping, I don't know. Me and my boyfriend were sitting in a parking lot listening to music. I was in his lap. His mom had previously told us not to go there because it was sketchy, but we didn't have anywhere else to go sit. Suddenly my boyfriend jolts up and whispers my name, then says, "Get in the passenger seat right now." I glance behind me, and there's a man rolling up in a car in front of us. His face literally the shit of nightmares. Bald, fat, but wide eyes like he was on drugs and thin lips. He looked like he'd be a killer or something, and I've had nightmares about him since. I hop into the passenger seat and hunker down as my boyfriend grabs his pistol. He rolls his window down and says, "Can I help you?" The man in the car, very calmly, nonchalantly, and creepily says, "Did you guys order pizza?" My boyfriend says, "Nah, we ain't order no pizza." In the same creepily calm tone, he says, "Ah, must be next door." We were in a plaza parking lot at 12 p.m. Everything was enclosed. My boyfriend follows his car, and we watch him turn onto the highway and speed off. Feel free to leave theories in the comments because he wasn't driving any sort of delivery car, and it was pretty late. My best guess is that he was hoping it would be a woman alone. When I was a freshman in college in 2001, a few of us became quick friends on our floor, and we started doing a regular late-night trip once a week to this casino in Sloan, Iowa, on a reservation called Winnevegas. We'd only bring $20 each, so we could all be there 20 minutes or 2 hours. One night we were there for almost 8 hours because we were all doing great at the blackjack tables. On our way back to school, I rode in the back of this boat of a Buick. It was an old and solid steel, but I had the back seat to myself while my friend sat shotgun and his girlfriend drove. The plan was to a restaurant called the Frying Pan. Think Denny's. Anyway, I'm laying down in the back and I'm starting to fall asleep when all of a sudden I hear this powerful direct voice say very clearly and with a command, "Get up." It was stern but not mean. It wasn't loud but definitely not quiet either. I was so startled and weirded out that I got right up and put my seatbelt on. That's when I almost died. My friend told his girlfriend, "Jamie, you're gonna miss the exit." She turns the car toward the off-ramp like we're going 20, but we're on the interstate going 75. The car rolls and rolls, then flips and rolls again. Glass, pop cans, change, wallets, purse, shoes, jackets, everything's flying around. When we finally stopped, we ended right side up. My friend and his girlfriend were very banged up, even though they had seatbelts on. If I didn't have mine on, I would have died, no doubt. The side of the car where I was sitting still had the door, but it was crushed and bent like a letter V with a sharp, jagged edge. My friend and his girlfriend had to go to the ER, but I was freaking unscathed. No bumps, no bruises, no cuts, nothing.